Good afternoon. You're listening to Gambling with an Edge. Now here are your hosts, Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Today, Richard and I are doing another one of our mailbag shows. First question from a listener. Let's say I put $100 into a machine and play it down to $10, but forgot to put my card in and realize it only when I have $10 left. Then I insert my card with only $10 of my $100 left and finish playing off the $10. Do you think the Players Club will give me credit for the entire $100 of play, or only credits played when my card was inserted? Well, I think only when your card was inserted you can ask them, but basically I think you're SOL. Next question. Let's hear yours and Bob's biggest fails on your AP adventure. Richard.
Oh, well, the first one that came to mind was in 1985. I somehow heard that two things. They had early surrender on the island of Curacao, and there was a magazine back then called Gambling Times, and I read it religiously, and there was a tiny ad in the magazine that said a new casino was opening in Aruba, and they were going to have a single deck with surrender. And so I thought this sounded like a tremendous opportunity. Now, I was retired at that point in 1985, as I've done many times. But I called up my friend, Daryl, and I said, hey, there's this opportunity. And he's like, okay, let's go. And so the first thing I did was I called him back and I said, okay, we leave in 3 weeks on Friday. And he said, why are we leaving in 3 weeks? And I said, well, if we were to leave sooner, the tickets would cost us like $800. But if we wait 3 weeks, they'll only cost us, $350. And he said, we're talking about going to play a game that might be worth $1,000 an hour, and you're trying to save, $500 on an airline ticket. And it really sort of woke me up. It was a kind of a big learning moment for me, because prior to that, I was on a team where, you had to drive an extra 6 blocks if you could save 2 cents on a gallon of gas. So, and this was my first real team play with him. Anyway, so we fly off to Curacao, and sure enough, they have early surrender, and we promptly get stuck $30,000 or $40,000, and we end up extending our stay, so we have very little time going to Aruba by the time we leave Curacao. We fly to Aruba, and now we go to every casino we can find, and there is no single deck game. And so we end up coming back home. And later, we found out that there was a new casino and we had missed it. We had asked people where it was, and it was still so new that people didn't know about it because it wasn't right on the beach. And so we completely just missed it and never went there. And they did have single deck with surrender. And we heard that the guy who found it after we had been there won $300,000 before they stopped him from playing.
Wow.
So, another big lesson learned about the thoroughness of scouting. So, yeah, that was my first big epic fail that came to mind.
And I don't know about what my biggest fails are. I've had several thousand losing sessions, often more than one the same day. And every one I felt I had the advantage. There's a story behind every one of them. And I don't know many that will be all that instructive. Now, 2 come to mind. I don't know if they were my biggest. The M was giving away a new Land Rover worth about $50,000 to whoever earned the most points over a particular time period. I won it, but I lost $60,000 on the play, getting the $50,000 car. I was playing 50-cent, 50 play double bonus for $125 a hand. It was 9-6, which is a 99% game, but often it had double or triple points worth 0.6 or 0.9. And with other things, it was not all that much of an edge to give up. I wrote about this in my blog and was informed by dozens of people that knew everything that only an idiot would lose $60,000 when the maximum win was $50,000. I try to get them to look at it from the point of view of me already having lost $40,000 at one point. At the start of the last day, I had a $120,000 coin-in advantage, but $25 single line games were available, and my opponent was well known to play them for hours on end. Playing $50,000 coin-in hourly on such a machine was no big deal. It happened it was a double point day, so I planned on playing another $100,000 as a cushion. The expected loss on that much play was about $1,000, offset by $600 in cash back. A reasonable price to lock in my win, I thought. Unfortunately, that expected loss of $1,000 turned into an actual loss of $15,000. I had a room at the hotel that day and was upstairs writing, napping, whatever. Every couple hours, I'd drift down to the high limit room and see if she showed up. Eventually, she did, about 5 hours before the promotion ended. Basically, she could time me if she played to the end and I didn't play at all. I let her know that I had already played today and she was out of reach, hoping she'd conclude that she couldn't win, so she wouldn't play. She told me she was going to play and didn't expect to win. So I sat down and played some more, somewhat slowly, checking to see how long she played. If she was still there in 2 hours, I'd start playing faster. She left an hour and a half later while I was losing another $5,000. I checked once more an hour later. She wasn't there, so I figured she couldn't beat me if she came back. I didn't know what my score was going to be over that last little bit of play. I could easily have won quite a bit. It was only after it was all over that I knew what my score was. And some people would conclude a $50,000 prize, $60,000 loss. You're an idiot for doing that, period. And I couldn't explain that to anybody.
Yeah, I don't consider that a fail at all. I mean, you played with an edge, you had a losing session. I mean, that, to me, that's not a fail. I mean, but you must have had things where you sat down and you were, grinding away on a game and all of a sudden realized you weren't playing the game you thought you were or something. I've sat down at a blackjack table and all of a sudden I find out it's 6-5 when I didn't realize it when I sat down. That would be a fail, but, just having a losing session, I don't consider that a failure at all. It's just another day at the office.
Well, one early in my career is there was a Casino Royale on the, and they were having double royals. And I found a $5 9-6 jacks or better game that at that point I'd never played a $5 game in my life. So this is $25 a hand. But with a double royal, this was going to be good. And so but nobody else was there. And there was another machine. And one of the rules is if nobody else has found a good game, often it's not as good as you thought it was. Well, eventually I did hit the royal. I was been making all the strategy adjustments like holding ace 10, whatever else. And I hit the royal. And then I brought out the coupon. And the slot director said, well, we would be happy to pay you, except this says a royal flush in clubs. And yours happens to be in spades.
There you go. Now that's a fail.
And so it ended up winning $10,000 on the play, but I had been making bad plays all over the place. And it happened that right as I was waiting to be paid and they were on the machine was on, some of my students came by and I just started teaching classes at the old Fiesta and they saw I had held an ace 10. and they asked me when I was going to teach the advanced class to tell them when it's right to hold an ace 10. And because clearly I hit a royal, so it must have been right. And I was Bob Dancer, so I knew. And all I could tell them is, guys, at the time, it seemed to be the right play. So
there you go. That I think that qualifies as a fail. Actually, another one comes to mind. It's not really I'm partially to blame, but there used to be online casinos that had a particular software that a lot of the different online casinos used, and they all had a progressive deuces video poker that was spread across all the casinos. And so it got up to be a positive play. And now I'm just making these numbers up because I don't remember exactly, what the numbers were. But let's say that the jackpot was supposed to be 20,000 to make it positive. And it was like way positive. And so I called my brother, who was living, I think, in Hong Kong at the time. And I said, hey, I left him a message because he wasn't awake. And I said, hey, this play is positive. When you wake up, get on it. And so I was playing it on several accounts, and my friend Daryl was playing on several accounts. And Daryl hits the jackpot. And so it resets. And so I feel great about that. I go out to lunch, and I come back from lunch, and I get an email from my brother, and he says, I hit the royal. And I said, wait, what do you mean you hit the royal? Daryl hit the royal. And he says, no, I hit it, 17,000. And he did not get my email until after Daryl had already hit it, and it was reset at lower, and he was basically making a negative play because he didn't know what the number was. I had just told him, get on this when you wake up. So I was definitely at fault there, I guess. So another epic fail for you, but another one where we made money.
Yeah, it's hard to convince that only plays your worst failures were when you made money. But anyway, let's go on to the next question. What's the optimal way to build free play in your guys' opinion? Less days, more volume, or total volume? And I'm assuming they're talking about slot play. I'm not sure. Slot/video poker. But most casinos base free play on some combination of average daily theoretical and your loss. Playing a given amount of money in one day is better than playing the same amount over 2 days. If you have a big loss, it's probably better to quit now because playing more is just going to dilute your loss. With that said, different casinos have different policies. Some will allow you to build up your free play and let you come in and pick it up over the next 3 months without further play. Then you play again. Others will cut off your free play if you pick up your free play without playing some that same day. Players generally view free play as payback for past play. Casinos generally view free play as an incentive to get you to come in and play some more. So there's going to be differences of opinion. And every casino is a little bit different.
Right, but in general, it's way better to group all your play into one day than spread it out over multiple days.
Yeah, if you can. All right, next question. I'm relatively new AP in blackjack. I'm running into a lot of dealers who like to play my hands. It's quite annoying when I have to call them out to bust a hand because they went and hit the hand. Is there any advice to keep dealers in their lane? Richard.
Yeah, stop being nice. I mean, just make it really clear they're your cards. You play them the way you want, and then call the pit boss over and tell the pit boss, like, this dealer keeps playing my cards for me, and, I don't want them doing that. Just be rude about it. I mean, they're your cards. It's your money. You wouldn't go into a restaurant and order a burger and fries, and the waitress says, "Oh no, you can't have those fries. Those are bad for you." You wouldn't put up with that. So it's the same thing. It's your money.
All right. Next question. When starting out building a bankroll, what AP moves should you avoid and why? Well, don't spend money on optional stuff like tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, stuff like optional stuff. Postpone vacations. If there's a significant other in your life, make sure that person's on the same page. Keep your car a year or 3 longer than when you normally trade it in. Drive an economical car. Cash every coupon you can.
Yeah, I don't understand. He says, what AP moves would you avoid? And I don't really understand what he means. Although I would say if your bankroll is small and you're starting out and you're trying to, you would want to avoid things that were super high variance, right? So you want to grind and get more of a bankroll behind you. So you wouldn't bet your entire bankroll at 10-1 on a coin flip if it wasn't replenishable, just because if you lose that bet, you're wiped out. So you would want to avoid those kind of super, like for example, you wouldn't want to play a progressive video poker or something that might take you weeks to hit, or might bust you before you hit the royal, something like that.
Good. All right. Next question is addressed specifically to Richard. Have you ever or heard of someone who has schmoozed a casino manager or person in a similar position of power in order to prolong a play or throw them off the scent?
Oh, yeah. We've had people on the show talk about that. Somebody fairly recently was talking about becoming very friendly with the casino manager and playing golf with them. That works for a while, but they really tend to have their feelings hurt when they finally figure out that that you're an advantage player. So it is a way. Now, in the case of Tommy Highland, he was doing that with a casino manager down in St. Kitts, and the guy ended up finding out he was a card counter and putting a gun to his head and demanding his money back. So, it works until it doesn't work. Eventually, you will be found out and backed off, just like anybody else. And the problem that goes with it is he's not going to forget you. Doesn't matter how long you wait, he's not going to forget who you are. So,
all right, next question. Recently, I discovered a new video poker machine at a local Indian casino. It looked more like a slot machine and have different games that you could play from 3 hands to 10 hands at once. It also was a super times pay machine, and when certain conditions were met in the game, you can unlock up to 15 additional hands on the next game as a bonus. I was playing double bonus, 5 hands per roll. On one roll, we were awarded all the extra hands on the next roll. So we went from 5 hands to 20 hands for 1 roll only. I was dealt 2 pair, aces and tens, and 1 other card. My question is, in this scenario, would you just hold the aces and hope to catch 4 of a kind, or hold both pairs and shoot for a full house? All right. I don't know what game you're talking about. Super times pay by itself does not add more hands, but rather adds multipliers to the existing number of hands. Without knowing the exact game or pay schedule, even without knowing that, it's safe to say that in all versions of double bonus, if you're dealt 2 pair, aces up, you just hold the aces. That's kind of a basic strategy on all double bonus games. All right, next question. It's for me. Am I able to maintain 7-star status with Caesars despite what appears to be a lack of attractive video poker options in Las Vegas? If so, how do you do this, and how important, if at all, is this to you? Yes, I play at 7-star level, and I also play with Juan Bonnie's cards, so we both have 7 stars. I'm a math major, so I know that's 14 stars, although that doesn't mean anything. In Vegas, I don't play video poker. I play slots there. There are other casinos I play video poker at. In the Caesar system, they're only available for certain denominations and stuff. You can look on VP Free 2 and find out what they are if you're interested. All right, next question. I've heard Colin Jones talk about testing people when he was running a team. Richard, I'm sure you did the same thing when you were vetting players. One person Colin was testing said he used a non-high-low system, maybe KO, and pretty sure Colin and most others use high-low. What is the process of testing at a live casino table? You can accurately test someone using a different count system.
Well, on the teams that I played on, everybody used the same count system. So we wouldn't be able to test them in a live casino if they were using a different count. You could test them at home on the kitchen table, but the teams I played on, we all used the high-low. And, we would test each other at home on the kitchen table, and then we would go out to the casino and someone would sit with you at the table. And at the end of the shoe, they would watch you play. They would keep count. They would watch your playing decisions, your betting decisions. And at the end of the shoe, you would tell them what count you had. So some people on the team took it more seriously than others. I remember, a test out I had where I had two teammates who were there who seemed to be having a very good time and not paying that much attention to the test out. But yeah, anyway, that's the way we did it.
If they weren't paying attention, were they serious enough to still be on the team?
Well, yeah, this was a team where they were already on it and they were testing me. And, and so to do the test, I went down to the Golden Gate downtown, and I was going to be betting 25 to 2 hands of 500. And I got there, I got set up on the game, I had my chips, and my teammate shows up, and this was a $1 table. And he walks up to the table, he's wearing a suit and tie, and he buys in for $3 single. And the pit boss comes running down the pit and says, he can't play. And so we had to find a different casino to go play in. And we thought the only place that my teammate could play without bringing a lot of heat was a place across from the El Cortez. At that time was called the Orbit Inn. It then became the Western. And they had a $25 max and a $1 minimum. And so we just reduced the units down to, 1 to 2 hands of 25. And another teammate showed up. And so the three of us were all on the table, and it became kind of a party.
Sounds like it. The Western used to be known as a break-in house where the dealers would make all kinds of mistakes, and that was a gravy train for players. Was that true at the time you went?
Well, they wouldn't take any action at all. It might have been a gravy train for nickel players, but I remember the last time I went into the Western, I walked up to the roulette table, and the dealer spun the wheel about as hard as she could possibly spin it, the roulette wheel. She just flings this wheel and then, spins the ball. And the wheel slowed down, and came to a dead stop before the ball ever left the track. Because it was so old and need of, greasing or whatever that she couldn't get it to spin long enough for it to keep going before the ball dropped. That was the kind of joint the Western was.
All right. Another question for Richard. I've read in many books, most recently The Blackjack Life by Nathaniel Tilton, and other places that mention wonging and back counting. People talk about it like it's something easy to do and a skill to develop. Is this still a practice among current APs? This seems like a good way to draw scrutiny. How do you pull this off without just staring at a table and appearing to have more than just an interest in waiting for an open seat?
Well, yes, it's still used all the time. And just don't look like you're doing what you're doing. I mean, one way to do it would be to stand with your back to the pit and make it look like you're not looking at the table, but you're waiting for somebody. And you can turn your head whenever they deal the round and count the round and then not look at the table. Just don't stand there intently staring at the table, counting cards. And if you can't do that, it means you probably need more practice. Those are kind of the same people that when they are counting cards, stare intently at the layout, and sometimes their lips are moving while they're counting. It just means you need more practice.
All right. Next question. We're going to take it for sure because he addresses us to gentlemen. Now, clearly someone who knows what he's talking about.
Far more respect than we deserve.
I learned craps as a sophomore in college in the 70s while studying mathematical statistics. Our professor had us throw dice and record the outcomes in order to prove randomness. I learned early that the game is nothing more than probability combined with a little luck. My winning method has always been slow but normally a sure thing. Inasmuch as craps is random, I've always followed the last decision, pass or don't, martingale, and hope I can win one time before 6 or 7 decisions. Anything beyond losing 7 decisions will require a larger bankroll. The game can be complicated but winnable. What do you think? I'm going to try this one first. The base game in craps has an edge of 1.4%. You can add on an optional even money bet, taking or laying odds, but your base game is still a loser for the player. A martingale system cannot turn a losing bet into a positive one. With this system, you'll usually win a little, but every so often you'll lose a lot. Maybe all your money, or maybe you're just going to run up to the house limit. And when you lose, you're going to lose more than what you won in your small winning sessions. In general, no betting system can make up for playing a game where the house has the edge.
I would just add you get an F in your probability and statistics class if you didn't understand that answer. I don't know how you could have been studying probability and statistics and think that that would be a winning system.
All right. He may no longer call us gentlemen. Next question. I'm down a lot of money playing a high variance games like 9-6 double-double bonus or 9-6 triple-double bonus. The casino I play does have the opportunity to play 9-6 jacks or better, in that I gain an edge with promotions. However, it seems like chasing the royal flush is a very tedious process for profit, and people playing there all complain of lacking royals after a long stretch of time. Should I only play positive 9-6 jacks with promotions and stop entirely playing double-double bonus and triple-double bonus and take my significant losses? And how should I get my losses back? Should I still give a try at either double-double bonus or triple-double bonus at some time in the hope of getting dealt 4 aces with a kicker or something similar? Please give me suggestions and thank both of you. All right. In round numbers, the jacks or better game you referred to returns 99.5% with low variance. The double-double bonus game you referred to is 99% even, and the triple-double bonus is 98.2% with a very high variance. Variance goes both ways. Sometimes you win big, sometimes you lose big. Personally, I would never play a 99% game if one for 99.5% with the same benefits were available. And it's relatively rare slot club that even makes a 99.5% game profitable. You say it's profitable with the promotions at your casino. I have my doubts. Insofar as getting your losses back, I would not look to gambling at such poor games to do this. I would look towards getting a job or another job or selling an asset, inheriting a bunch, marrying well, maybe divorcing well, something else. When I look to gambling as an income source, it starts with only gambling when I have the edge. And that's not the situation you describe here. Next question. About a year ago, my wife and I were gambling at a casino in the Bahamas. We settled down at a free bet blackjack table. There was one other player at the table. It took only a few hands to see the dealer had no clue how to deal this game. He was paying on 22s and allowing free bets on any hand. I mean, any hand. I nodded at my wife and the other player. We all knew what we were going to do, and we hit it as hard as we could so as not to draw heat. Up comes Mr. Honest Player. The first time he was mispaid on a 22, he stopped play and told the dealer. The other player kindly said he should keep quiet. His response is, they'll catch it eventually, and I don't want to sit here while they review the tapes. A few hands later, we were all paid on a 22. Mr. Honest felt the need to report this as well. This caused a suit to be called and get all our bets turned into pushes. At this point, myself and my wife and the other player all gently told this guy to shut the fuck up when it involves other people's money. A short time later, another dealer error on my hand, and this guy stops playing again. Suit comes over again. We all tried to quietly encourage the other player to find another table, but the jig was up. The dealer got sent away and the suit started dealing. Game over. I've heard both of you speak on getting civilians and annoying players off the table. Any new tips? This casino was no smoking, and I don't smoke, but I might have started to get him off the table. Our attempt at gentle nudging to leave failed. Any new advice to get this player like him to shut up? Richard?
No, it's extremely frustrating when that happens. And I mean, you do what you can. Those are the guys who wanted to be the hall monitor in high school to make sure you had a pass before you went to the bathroom. The only thing that you might try, one thing you could try is coughing a lot and saying, man, I hope I don't have COVID. I can't get rid of this cough. That might help. But, you can be as rude as you can to the guy telling him to shut up, but some people just will not be deterred. Unfortunate, just goes with the territory.
All right, next question. Hello, Bob. I'm from Toronto, Canada. I was intrigued about video poker and wondered if it's still beatable in casinos today. If so, which books and strategy do you suggest? Yes, it's beatable, but not as easily as in years past. And in years past, the games in Canada were considerably tighter than the ones in the United States. I don't know the current environment there. If you want an introduction to the game, I recommend my own Video Poker for the Intelligent Beginner. Next question. I'm a contract blackjack dealer with a local Las Vegas Knights type of organization and hear strong folklore about the advantage of being the player at third base. I understand blackjack is not a team sport. I understand that statistically blackjack is a series of dependent events where one hand does influence another. I also understand that the influence is just as likely to be good or bad. Please clarify under what condition, if any, are there to sitting at third base?
There really isn't. I mean, there is a very small amount of advantage if you were counting cards and you were playing in a game where the cards are dealt face down, and maybe it was a single deck game and you get to see a few extra hit cards or the cards of the other player's hands when they double down, things like that. But really, it doesn't make any difference at all. This idea of the third baseman affecting, whether the dealer busts or not, that's all nonsense. There's really no advantage to sitting at third base.
What about if you can see on a face-up game you can see all the cards kind of at one glance, whereas if you were sitting in the middle of the table, you have to move your head back and forth to see them, making it more obvious that you're counting.
Not much. Not much. And in my own case, I would rather be sitting in the middle just because I see them better than if I'm sitting at third base. Like to see the cards over at first base. I mean, I can see them, but yeah, I actually prefer sitting more in the middle. Now,
All
sometimes
right.
it can be an advantage because you can see the dealer's whole card from that seat. Now, that's a situation where it's an advantage to sit in what we would call the lucky seat.
Right. And that could be any position, depending on that particular
Yeah.
dealer. Okay. Next question. Assume you play with an edge and haven't seen a 4 of a kind for 30 minutes playing jacks or better. Would you switch from 9-6 jacks or better to 9-6 bonus deluxe or 9-7 triple double bonus? You have an edge on all 3 games and would want to try your luck on other games if you do badly on one game. Okay, I don't change games based on what has happened over the last hour, day, or week. I choose games by looking forward, including the base game, slot club, promotions, etc., assuming I can afford the swings. Of the 3 games you mentioned, I'd be playing 9-6 bonus poker deluxe from the get-go because it returns more than the other 2. Next question. I have a regular 40-hour-a-week job. I plan on keeping it long-term, and I want to do AP stuff on the side or as a hobby. Even when I try to explain what I'm trying to do with gambling, my family and friends can't seem to understand it. Since both of you are APs, have you run into this scenario, and how do you deal with it? Have you both been able to achieve balance, and so friends and family don't wrongly label you as an addicted gambler? It's getting really frustrating, and any advice will be appreciated. Richard.
Well, yeah, of course. We've all run into this a lot. It's a major issue for many, many professional gamblers. And I've talked on the show a lot about it. It was impossible for me to meet women who didn't think I was a degenerate gambler. Dating was a nightmare. And one of the reasons I married my wife was because she got it right away from the beginning. She understood that what I did was a job. About the only thing that you can do is, first of all, I probably wouldn't talk about it to them anymore if they're just not going to get it. But the other thing is to keep records. And, once you have a couple of years worth of records that show you're a consistent winning player, well, it becomes harder and harder for them to argue with you. But yeah, that's the only advice I can give.
Yeah, and I've been doing this for so long, and as a writer and a teacher, that they don't really question that so much whether or not I can do it. So, but it's tough.
I should say I was really fortunate growing up that my parents, they got it right away too. Now, part of that was while I was in high school, I started gambling in high school. And while I was in high school and college, I had a bulletin board in my bedroom and I had pieces of paper up there with all of my results based on different games, poker, backgammon, gin rummy, whatever I was gambling on. And my dad would come in and he would look at the pages and say, oh, you're doing much better at this game than that game or whatever. And I had a grandfather who had consistently made money playing poker for his entire life. So my mom kind of just understood that some people could actually make money gambling.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is entirely relevant. In my case, I've been married to Bonnie for 8 years, and there was a lot of resistance from her family member, especially her daughter, when we started. The daughter was concerned that I would lose all my money and then take Bonnie's. And so that was a concern. Over time, the daughter came to realize that that I was successful at what I was doing and I was taking good care of Bonnie, and so everything was fine. Well, fast forward about 6 years, and the daughter and her husband move to Las Vegas. Her husband was dying and has since then died. But now she lives close to Bonnie, and they hang out a lot together. And I set up the daughter with a friend of mine who is a successful gambler. And there was and they've done well together, and how long they're going to last, I don't know. But the fact that he was a friend of mine and did something similar to what I do, now the daughter is open to the idea that he could be a good guy to go out with. Whereas before I came along, the daughter would not have been open to that idea at all. Of course, you probably wouldn't have met the guy either. But your experience can change based on when you know. Okay, so we're going to have some commercials now. Richard, you get to go first.
Well, if you're serious about card counting, the Blackjack Apprenticeship membership is a great way to learn, train, network, and get the resources you need to succeed. We've had quite a few guests on Gambling with an Edge who exclusively trained and got their start through Blackjack Apprenticeship. Check out the website at blackjackapprenticeship.com. They have member forums, training software, and guides to help you learn. That's blackjackapprenticeship.com, and you will find a link in the show notes.
Videopoker.com is the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on most of the game. Game of the week is Good Times Pay. 6 to 10 coins per line, random multipliers, but it's always 100% bonus. When I played at the South Point, isn't real often, but the best game is quarter triple play NSU, which is $7.50 per play. I sometimes play that game while I'm waiting for a nearby machine to open up. It's a lot more interesting to play than single line NSU. It's the same decisions, but having 3 pops at it is a lot more fun.
If you're interested in getting the edge at sports betting, then unabated.com is a great resource for you. Founded by frequent Gambling with an Edge guests, Captain Jack and Rufus Peabody, Unabated is designed for both new and experienced sports bettors. Their real-time odds screen, tools, and calculators take a lot of the guesswork out of trying to quantify your edge. There's also plenty of free education and instruction to help you along your journey to becoming a sharper sports bettor. You can currently take advantage of a 7-day free trial to decide if the premium membership at Unabated is right for you.
Back to our questions. In a recent show, one of you got a question about managing your bankroll. Richard said that in the beginning, he kept 6 months' worth of living expenses separate from his gambling bankroll. That sounds like great advice, but thinking back to those days, what would you do, Richard, if you didn't have enough left in your gambling bankroll? Would you have stopped gambling and gone back to work as a dealer or something else? What if you only had 3 months living expenses?
Okay, so when I started playing, we had devoted bankrolls that would play until they hit a certain target. So when the bankroll started, let's say the bankroll was going to be $50,000 and there were 5 of us. We each put up $10,000 in cash, and that became the bankroll. And we did not have access to that money other than for playing. Now, I hear about players who play with a 5% risk of ruin or a 3% risk of ruin. Our risk of ruin was 0. Because if we lost half of that, so I put my 10,000 into that bankroll. I have 6 months worth of money that I've set aside to live on. Okay, now the bankroll. If we lost half of the money in that bankroll, we cut our bets in half. And if we lost half of it again, we cut our bets in half again. So our chance of going broke was almost 0. I mean, yes, it could happen, but or the bankroll could get theoretically so small that it wouldn't be worthwhile to play anymore, or you wouldn't be able to spread your bets. But that never happened. So now the other question is, what happens if the bankroll lasts more than 6 months and you start to run out of personal money. Well, fortunately, that didn't happen to me. So it never came to that. And I was pretty conservative. Maybe I would have had more than 6 months, or I might have stocks that I could sell if I needed to, if it lasted longer than that period of time. But anyway, that's the way we approached it.
Very good. And I never kept mine separate. When I started, I moved here and I had $6,000, and that was to live on for 2 people and to gamble with. And we just scrounged as best we could until it grew. Probably I got lucky at good times, and that was one of the secrets to my success. I don't know that that's duplicatable. But I never had a totally separate bankroll. Next question has to do with free play strategy. Oftentimes making the trip to Vegas among my friends is determined by the free slot play offers we receive. The question among the group is, what's the proper denomination strategy to spend the free play? Some of us feel that it's to play at the same levels as we would normally play at and hope for the best. Conversely, others claim it's better to use free play at a much higher denomination per bet in the hopes of hitting a much bigger payment, one that would normally not be eligible for us at our normal level. What do you guys think? All right. I don't think free play money is all that different than regular bankroll. Let's say you have a bankroll of $20,000 and you get $500 in free play. Well, I think you should make your decision assuming you have a bankroll of $20,500. That $500 does not have any magical quality that the rest of the bankroll doesn't. Next question. What are the common issues gamblers can run into with depositing and withdrawing large cash sums with banks? Any strategy to avoid getting things frozen unnecessarily? Richard.
Well, I haven't heard of people having their account frozen, but I've heard many accounts of getting backed off from your bank. The bank tells you we don't want your action anymore. So, the best thing would be to go in and talk to your banker and say, look, I am in this business and I have a lot of large cash transactions. And some bankers are going to say, we don't want it. It depends on where you live. Like if you live in Las Vegas, you're much more likely for them to understand those kinds of things. But and some banks are worse than others. Wells Fargo is particularly bad with large cash transaction. People with a lot of large cash transactions. I don't know. I mean, it's just part of doing business. I would try to avoid it also. I mean, if possible, just keep a lot of money in cash so you don't have to deposit it and withdraw it. And,
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I keep money in cash in various safety deposit boxes around town. And when it gets too much, I start taking checks for royal flushes and depositing checks. And they have no problem depositing those checks. And if it gets too low, well, then I use my lines of credits and withdraw and pay off with it. Pay off with a check to the casino and keep the cash. And so that has no problem. But I'm a slot player, video poker player, where since I have W2Gs, I use my real name. So that puts me in a different situation than many of our listeners. But I have not had a problem with, I basically don't deposit or withdraw large sums of cash. All right. Next question. I'm an amateur but capable card counter who's been playing green chips for a while. I'm looking to step up my bet from 25, 150 to 50 and 2 times 400. I'll know I'll need an emotional bankroll and we'll see how that goes. Any other suggestions to watch for or be ready for? If I have a winning session, do you advise rat holing to obscure my win? Richard.
Well, you can't rat hole if there's nobody else at the table betting the same color chips you're betting. So yes and no. Yes, you should rat hole, but you have to do it in situations where they can assign those chips to somebody else. Yeah, I mean, just realize you are going to get more scrutiny because you are betting more. But yeah, I mean, if it feels uncomfortable to take the swings that you're taking, well, maybe cut back until you get more comfortable with those amounts.
And you've mentioned before, don't cash out your chips immediately after playing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That would apply even more if you're playing bigger amounts. If you're going to come back to this casino in the relatively near future. If you're just passing through, you kind of have to. Next question. Do we think using a food comp and not playing hurts our offers? Well, different places have different policies. Each general manager or vice president of marketing can make up his or her own policies and can change them at will. I suggest you put this question to a host. They probably know the policy at their casino.
But at Caesar's properties, they're going to trip you if you use a food comp, right?
Maybe. If you're 7 stars in the local, they've done away with their diamond lounges and their 7-star lounges, and so now they give you a Laurel offer, which for 7 stars means you get $10 in food credit a day. It has to be spent before midnight, and 4 drink tickets, which are up to $25 per drink. And I asked my host if we could, if it trips you, and the reason I wanted to know was if I was playing on an offer for me, but Bonnie was joining me for dinner, could we cash her Laurel vouchers and use that in addition to without tripping her? And his best guess is using the Laurel offers, which were small, but did not affect offers, and our experience is that's true. All right. So one more question. How are full-time APs, especially those playing primarily table games, able to cash out enough chips to generate their income without giving up their ID or generating excessive heat? Richard.
Well, if you cash out $2,000 a day, that's $700,000 a year. I mean, I don't know how big your expenses are, but it's pretty easy to cash out as much money as you need. Just keep it under $2,000 per cash out.
And why are you mentioning 2,000 instead of 3,000 or some
because
other number?
Well, some casinos it's 2,500, some it's 3,000, but some it's 2,000. And if you go to the Gold Coast, every $500 chip they have to call the pit. But under 2,000, you are pretty safe in 90+% of the casinos out there. That you're not going to have to show ID. And don't do that, by the way. Don't walk away from the table with $12,000 in chips and go directly to the cage and cash out, 1,900. Walk out the door, come back at another time, cash out your 1,900. Or the next time you come back before you start to play, cash out 1,900. And you still have your chips from the last time you played.
Yeah, if you make it a point of cashing out 1,900 a day out of your 12,000 without additional play, that is structuring, and you probably won't get caught, but it is against the rules. But
Bob Nersessian says if you're only doing it to avoid giving the casino your identity, then that's not structuring. He said that on the show in the past. And if you have your wife with you, she can do it. And,
Very good. So now we have a reason to get married. Okay, thank you. We're out of questions for now, so send them in. We like doing these shows, and actually, Richard and I both learned something while we're doing the show, and sometimes we have to look up stuff. So keep sending it to gamblingwithanedge@gmail.com. Richard has a Twitter account. We each have email addresses, which are fairly widely known. So keep them in, and we'll try doing this. At the end of our show, we frequently have a recommended section. So, Richard, do you have something to recommend to our audience today?
Yeah, I've changed it at the last minute. So
Are you allowed
my
to do that?
Yeah, I have to. But don't let me forget what I was going to recommend this week, so for next week. But there's a podcast. Colin Jones has a Blackjack Apprenticeship podcast, and the most recent one he has on two people who have sued casinos successfully, were abused by casinos egregiously, and they've kind of taken it upon themselves to be of help. I guess one of the guys is finished law school and is working on his, bar exam or something. But anyway, for table games players, it's definitely an interesting listen. And I forgot what the name of it is, but we will put it in the show notes. So check that out. It's the Blackjack Apprenticeship podcast.
It's interesting.
And we'll link to the specific episode. The one guy, basically was chained to a bench for like 6 hours.
Ooh.
And there is a video of it on YouTube. And he managed to record with his phone the audio. So it makes for interesting listening and watching.
Interesting that you say studying for your bar exam when this is about being barred from casinos. And oh well. My recommendation is David Baldacci's Series in Order. Now, I've mentioned earlier that I've been a big fan of David Baldacci novels. Previously, I read them pretty much in the order they came out. And he comes out with like 2 a year. But he has several series. And they're largely, but not entirely, independent of each other. There's a John Puller series where he's an army criminal investigator with a brother who is falsely accused of treason, and he has a father who was his famous general but now has Alzheimer's. There's a Roby and Reel series where they're paid assassin for the CIA. There's an Amos Decker series where a football injury gave him unusual powers and liabilities. And there's several other series as well. And so when I read them before, I just read whatever book came along, and it would take a while to get back in and put together all the pieces. So now I'm going back and on audio tape, listening to the series in orders, all the John Puller books in a row, and then all the Roby and Reel books in a row. And I'm getting a whole lot more out of the books than I did the first time around. I read them not that long ago, but it's an entirely new experience, and I'm enjoying it. All right. Keep your questions coming to us. Thank you, Richard. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.